It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, it's a homecoming for this piece of Wichita history built here 60 years ago. The Lear Jet company may be gone, but its first airplane is about to begin a second life. Also, we'll show you some living and breathing aircraft and the man who makes and pilots them, so to speak. See how homing pigeons still serve a purpose in our modern world. Plus, this Wichita woman gets the birthday party of a lifetime. And it comes none too soon. She's 102. See why so many dignitaries gathered to honor this historic woman. I'm Sierra Scott. Those stories in this week's Kansas Wild Edge are queued up and ready to roll in this edition of Positively Kansas. Lear Jet has a history that dates back to 1962, when Bill Lear helped pioneer the industry of personal jets. They were built in Wichita for 60 years and were the gold standard for decades, true icons of the sky. Now that production has ended, the first Lear Jet ever sold has been discovered and returned to Wichita. Chris Frank shows us why this may be an important moment in the history of the air capital.
To the general observer, the first appearance of this plane's fuselage, minus the wings, engines, and rudder, may be underwhelming. The dull, dirty paint finish speaks of how long the plane has sat out in the elements while out of service. But to the knowledgeable aviator, this plane represents aviation history.
The impact of this aircraft start is really pretty historic.
Historic, he says, because this is Learjet Model 23, serial number 003. This is the very first Learjet delivered to a customer from the Wichita Learjet factory where it was built. And that's why so many Learjet enthusiasts were on hand to welcome its Wichita return and pose for photos in front of it.
It created an industry.
Bill Kincaid with the Classic Learjet Foundation says this plane represents the beginning of the business aviation industry. That's because before the Lear 23 model began being delivered to customers, almost all business aviation was confined to piston-powered airplanes.
It was the third airplane ever built, first one ever delivered. And Learjet was the first airplane to ever be designed and built from day one to be a business jet.
Learjet 23003 was delivered to a Cincinnati-based chemical company October 13, 1964. The plane's ownership changed several times over the decades. The plane hasn't flown in years and was parked at the Bartow, Florida Executive Airport where it was deteriorating. Compare that photo to the plane's appearance years earlier when it was still in service.
The condition is as you would expect for an aircraft that hasn't flown 26 years.
Then in 2022, its owner contacted Learjet historian Dick Kovich offering the plane for sale.
About a year ago this month, I got a phone call out of the blue from a guy who says, "I heard you want to buy a Learjet." So I said, "Who are you?" "I own it." So he owns 003.
The Classic Learjet Foundation organized as a nonprofit to buy, recover, and restore the plane. Foundation members are drawing on lessons learned by Friends of Doc in their B-29 restoration. This is how team members found the plane when they went to Bartow, Florida, first to inspect it in February. Later, several worked on the disassembling to transport the jet on 2 flatbeds to Wichita. While in Florida, the crew got a surprise visit from the widow of Bill Lear Jr. Brenda Lear wanted to see the plane off and, in her own way, bless it.
She wanted to, in her own words, give it a kiss before it went off to surgery and wish it well. And so she came out and visited with us. She sat in the cockpit and took some pictures. She signed the side of the airplane, and we were very honored to have her there, part of this, and to have that Lear name there on site during that was extraordinary.
Foundation members say getting the plane out of Florida quickly was important to prevent further damage, such as what it suffered from Hurricane Ian in 2022.
The last hurricane that went through actually was close to the airplane. They got high winds down there, and the rudder was actually ripped out of the airplane. It was dangling by the cables.
We wanted to get it out of the hurricane zone and stop the decay.
One may notice the engines are missing. The 2 power plants were picked up and delivered to International Turbine, Inc. in Michigan. That company asked to rebuild the engines. Joel Weber says that's nearly a $1.3 million donation.
We have a lot of people lined up wanting to be involved with this project because of how much of an iconic airplane this is.
Now consider the first 2 Learjets. Number 1 was damaged beyond repair when it crashed shortly after takeoff during flight testing. Pilot error was to blame. The 2 pilots escaped injury. And number 2?
Number 2 is in the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian thought the Learjet was such a unique product that changed the world that they have number 2 in the museum.
That number 2 was also a flight test plane.
Our research indicates there is no active 23 model in the United States, so the general public can't experience an airplane like this.
So that's why getting this plane is considered a prize.
The overarching goal is to present this aircraft as a living flight history aircraft, in that the general public will be able to fly on it at some point down the road.
Bill Lear moved to Wichita from Switzerland to establish his Learjet company here in 1962. His goal was to design, build, certify, and deliver a business jet. When the Model 23 hit the market, it took the aviation industry by storm. Bill Lear rightly believed there was a market for corporate and private jet travel. With clever marketing, the Learjet name became the branding for all business jets.
And Learjet is synonymous with airplanes like Coca-Cola and Kleenex. It was a Learjet.
Wichita was even labeled Hollywood East because of all the celebrities coming here at Bill Lear's sales pitch invitations.
I've flown every Lear that's ever been built.
Oh, I'll need a hat. You need a hat?
Pilot Alan Goodwin couldn't pass up the opportunity to see this jet homecoming. Goodwin is a second-generation Learjet pilot. His dad flew Learjets, and his parents were personal close friends with Bill and Moya Lear.
They were over the house all the time. So yeah, Bill and Dad were personal friends. So matter of fact, I flew with Dad co-pilot on Bill Lear's Lear Star.
Goodwin boasts of the Lear 23's performance. Was it like a hot rod in the air?
No, it was a dragster. It really was. There was nothing to touch it.
That high performance is part of the Learjet's legacy.
The Learjet legacy is one thing, but you look at it from a perspective of this is the very first business jet delivered out of Wichita, Kansas. If you look at all of the business jets that followed in its path, how many business jets were delivered out of Wichita, it's phenomenal. You can think of that number.
Since then, over 10,000 business jets have been delivered out of Wichita, Kansas.
For this to be the first one to set the pace, not only for Learjet, for the entire town of Wichita, it's something that the whole town should own and be proud of, not just a Learjet legacy.
But all involved know it's going to take a lot of work and money to restore the plane. One thing that's not in short supply in Wichita are the people with the talent, the capability, and knowledge to restore a plane like this, and there are already volunteers lining up to be a part of this restoration.
We will have some issues to deal with, but the Classic Learjet Foundation is composed of Learjet retirees with very good skill sets as far as aircraft and repairs of aircraft. We think we're probably the best organization in the world to undertake this restoration.
The foundation is in discussions with people locally about where to restore the aircraft and where it may be operated out of. $90,000 got the ownership, but the restoration price?
It's going to be in the 7-figure range.
So it'll take time, money, and hard work to complete the project, but these enthusiasts say it will be well worth the effort when it is completed. This is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
Once the foundation makes the final payment on the plane, they can get started on the restoration. So stay tuned for new developments. Before there were ever planes, homing pigeons were the most effective and popular aircraft, so to speak, for centuries. Obviously, they didn't carry people, but they did carry messages and mail across long distances and over rugged terrain. Homing pigeons may seem like an outdated way of communicating today, but they're still around, even here in Kansas. Now they're used strictly for racing.
I am 45 years old, always been in a wheelchair. Well, moved to Kansas back in 2007. Met Hope about 4 years ago now. Met up with a local club here in town and got into birds that way. I was given a few birds, you know, just to have around the house. Wasn't ever going to do anything. It was just to help train the dogs that I had at that point in time. I got more interested in the birds. There's something about having a bird that goes out 150, 200, 300 miles, and the only thing they want to do is come home. If I get a bird from, all right, let's say Mike calls me and says, hey, I've got a bird that I know you're going to want, come get it. Well, that bird's already been flown. That bird will always live in this loft. He won't go anywhere. I can't let him out because he's going to go back to Mike's house. But his babies, if they're born here, will always know this is home. On a day like today with a south wind, take them down to, you know, the casino or Wellington or somewhere like that, you can see birds in 45 minutes. That's 20 miles. There's a lot of one loft races nowadays. So you raise birds at home, you ship them to Oklahoma or the Flint Hills has one, South Africa has one. There's hundreds across the United States. Texas has a bunch. And there's a lot of big money to be won. That's kind of the warm-up for the season, yes. It's 130 miles. It's Guthrie, Oklahoma. There's a band. It's actually a clip band. It's usually blue, green, something of that nature. That clock's on an ETS pad. The ETS pad is connected to an actual electronic clock. Red-tailed hawks, Cooper's hawks, falcons. Yeah. I lost my best bird off of that roof over there one day. They're opportunistic birds, so they're going to go after whatever they can get their hands on. When we lost Duchess, that was a horrible night. But we hunted her and whatnot for a while. But the birds became more of a passion. Losing a bird is as difficult as losing a dog. We as pigeon people don't talk about our birds. We don't openly discuss it. We all know who each other is. We all go have dinner with everybody. We all go hang out at the clubhouse and do all that stuff. But they're not openly talking about it with people. Guys out there that want to train dogs and they're shooting birds, we don't even talk to them. Not that that's not how I started, because I started with a bird dog, but I wasn't ever going to hurt them. If you openly admit to me that you're going to shoot a bird, I'm not even going to talk to you.
It's only been in the last 20 years that remote police departments in India have stopped using carrier pigeons to provide information during emergencies. Improved internet service has now finally made that unnecessary. One of the best places to be, according to journalist Mike Blair, is the great outdoors. But even if you're not the adventurous, outdoorsy type, you can still enjoy the wilds of Kansas from the comfort of your own car. Mike shows us how in this week's edition of Kansas Wild Edge.
The Midwestern U.S. is blessed with an abundance and variety of wildlife. Vast grasslands, varied topography, and the Central Flyway combine to blend native and migrant wildlife viewing opportunities into some of the world's best. And no matter what your interest, seeing wild animals that share our space is a special joy. Whether it's watching animals at play, seeing rare species, glimpsing youngsters, or watching the behaviors and interactions of shy wild neighbors, seeing wildlife teaches us more about life and reminds us of Earth's beauty. Close encounters are always worth sharing. Fortunately, you don't have to be an expert outdoorsman to see wild animals. Many public lands are designed to concentrate wildlife for great viewing opportunities. These allow auto tours, where binoculars or spotting scopes can turn good viewing opportunities into great sightings. And modern devices such as small digital collars or even cell phone apps can help call wild animals out of cover and into open settings for easy viewing or photos. Keep animal needs in mind when looking for wildlife. On hot days, many concentrate around water to drink and stay cool. Early and late in the day, animals often feed in open areas. Watch crop fields that attract wildlife. Learn about major times of movement. Migration periods bring skies full of travelers, many being temporary guests seen at no other times. Find out where communal animals such as prairie dogs live and visit their towns to see a variety of animals that depend on these wild communities. Move slowly and look closely, for many animals blend almost perfectly with their surroundings and can be hard to see. A longer look can lead to surprising discoveries. Take advantage of the wildlife resources around us. You'll be blessed for what you see. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Love it, love it, love it. Next time, Mike shows us how fishing can be a real bonding experience for family members of all ages. Katie Conkling is a 102-year-old Kansan with lifelong experiences we can learn from and be inspired by. She grew up in the Wichita Children's Home and served in the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps in World War II. She tells our Chris Frank she has plans to live much longer and add to her life experiences.
Oh, welcome, good my evening. Lady. Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
It was a special January evening when Wichitan Katie Conkling was celebrated on her 102nd birthday. Veterans from all service branches hoisted American flags in welcoming a fellow veteran at the American Legion Post number 4.
Attention on deck! Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and welcome our guest of honor. World War II Army Air Corps Staff Sergeant Katie Conkling. Ow!
Conkling was visibly pleased to see such a great turnout for her 102nd birthday. As she was escorted in with salutes and well wishes, Conkling didn't seem fazed or overwhelmed at all. One can only imagine that at 102, she has seen and experienced so much that there's little left to be surprised about. Mayor Brandon Whipple wished Conkling a happy birthday and was surprised to hear Conkling's response that she is planning on several more birthdays.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm going to have some more.
Good.
My doctor already knows that. I told him I'm going to be 105 at least, And he says, well, what's wrong with 10? Oh, I says, okay, let's go for 10.
Well, let's do this again next year.
Yes, I'm a healthy character.
You look it.
And what you see is how Katie Conkling lives her life. It's a life without a lot of cares and things to be overly concerned about. Her daughter, Judy, says her mother turned 100 during the depths of the COVID pandemic. So she says that milestone was privately celebrated with only a few family members. It wasn't much different when she turned 101 with so much social distancing. So the family is pleased to get the chance now to get this many together to honor her. Local dignitaries, including Congressman Ron Estes and Mayor Brandon Whipple, helped Conkling celebrate this milestone.
So Katie, thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for representing Wichita as well as you have for over 102 years. And by the way, she just told me, I don't know if you missed this, but I said happy birthday, and she looked at me and said, I'm going to have more, you know. And so...
Although Katie is 102, she moves around with more energy than many a generation younger. She doesn't just greet the long line of well-wishers here and then quickly move each comer along. She strikes up conversations with all of them, as if all were her lifelong friends. It's just the way she is. Her son Michael of Pretty Prairie says his mom doesn't stop moving.
She's doing well. She keeps along. She moves. They do estate sales on the weekends, so that kind of keeps her out of trouble too.
She was born Katie Lawrence in Coffeyville in 1921. She was only 1 year old when the family moved to Wichita, where her dad could find carpentry work. We talked to Katie a few days later after her party to hear more about her challenging life growing up in Wichita in the 1920s and 1930s.
I had quite a talkable one, yeah, because it was during the Depression. Probably everybody was poor, church mice.
Her family, she says, was also poor.
They were poor. Yes, we were poor. I was put in the Wichita Children's Home because my mother couldn't take care of me.
And the place she loved to spend many hours at was the public library, where she says she could get lost in the books.
I practically lived at the library. I would start reading at the end of a book, and I'd read them all, and then I'd go to another row and do it, because I loved the library.
Katie graduated from East High School in 1939, then moved to Wisconsin to be with relatives and to find work. Then the war broke out.
The radio said, "This day will live in infamy."
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
A few months after the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, Conkling responded to an ad to join the new Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, later known as the Women's Army Corps.
That was 9 months after Pearl Harbor. I was sworn into the Army Air Corps.
She became an administrative specialist at military posts in Florida, California, and was in Hawaii when Japan surrendered, ending the war.
I was at Pearl Harbor.
I'll be seeing you.
It was a day of celebration. Katie knew she would soon get to return to Kansas.
Then we knew that we were going to be mustered out pretty darn fast.
After the war, Katie reunited with John Conkling of Pretty Prairie, whom she says they met when she was a senior in high school. Katie explains how John enticed her to date him.
It was when I was a senior in high school, and I met this guy that he says if I would go out with him, he'd give me an airplane ride and a ride on his motorcycle, and he never got rid of me.
But they first had to serve their country during the war. John was a B-26 co-pilot in the Army Air Corps, flying 66 missions over Europe, including on D-Day. They were married in 1945, had 2 children, Mike of Pretty Prairie and Judy of Wichita. Katie never forgot the joy of her first ride in a small airplane with John.
Since everybody else was flying, I wanted to fly too. But even after I had my first airplane ride, I wanted to fly.
She got her pilot's license and even flew in the Women's Powder Puff Derby. Husband John passed away in 2004.
Hi, Miss Katie. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Now, one of the keys to her longevity is staying active. Her daughter and caregiver, Judy Conkling, says her mom is constantly busy and on the move. She also says her mom stays interested in learning new things.
Well, I doubt if you asked her, does she feel old, she'd probably say no, because she's just always kept going. She's always been a go-getter and always been somebody that just always wanted to do things.
She says her mom was still driving from her home in Reno County into Wichita until she was 99 when she lost her license. Now living in Wichita, she has others drive her around. She shares her knowledge of history with grandchildren and without anyone who will listen. It's a history lived, not just read about because of her age.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
And at the rate she's going, we shouldn't be surprised to see her reach her goal of celebrating many more birthdays to come.
Oh, goodness.
In Wichita, this is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
So you may see Katie at a local estate sale, one of her favorite pastimes now. And don't be surprised if she strikes up a conversation with you, something she's prone to do. Well, that's a wrap for this week. Positively Kansas at kpts.org is our email address if you have a question or comment. Until next time, I'm Sierra Scott. So long.